Will families at Plympton International College and Errington Special School have access to an OSH facility on campus next year?
Yes, thank you, Member from Morialta. I'm aware of the public debate on this issue, and there's a few things that perhaps I can put on the record here in regards to Plympton International out of school hours care facilities. I was written to by the chairperson in May regarding the OSH facilities. It was a request for funding of, I think, between $450,000 and $500,000 to purchase a prefabricated building to service as a dedicated space for an expanded OSH. Department staff met with representatives from the school on the 8th of May and the 24th of May on how the school can utilise its existing $14 million redevelopment to construct a multi-purpose facility where OSH services could also be delivered. $23.5 million has been provided, I think, all by Labor governments. If I'm wrong about that, I'm sure you will correct me. $3.5 million for STEM in 2016, $3 million under Building Better Schools in 2017, a $3 million election commitment for a kiss and drop road improvements and additional classrooms, 2022, and a $14 million capital upgrade to which I just referred from the 23-24 state budget. Architects have been appointed and I understand planning is underway. I accept what the member for Morialta has said. There is need like this right across the system, you know, I'm not for a second saying to the Plympton community that, you know, that their request isn't without merit, because we have so many requests for new and refurbished infrastructure that do have merit that the budget just cannot accommodate, and sort of goes to the heart of the infrastructure plan that we released, which is about trying to set some sort of clear parameters around what we use to make decisions around where we put the money that we do have, which I would like that bucket of money to be larger. There's no doubt the member for Morialta wished it to be larger when he was the Minister for Education. But if we were to accommodate the funding request of an additional roughly $500,000, it would come at the expense of something else. And on all those infrastructure projects that we announced recently, and I think probably all the ones that have been announced since the election, I've taken the advice of the department on what are priorities and what are not priorities. In terms of your more specific question around what do we do around Plympton International College having an OSH, the department has given its commitment to work with the school to make sure there's an OSH there next year. Having dedicated OSH spaces is a topic that comes up all the time. My own three daughters we use OSH for them at a public primary school. It's not a dedicated room, it's a room that becomes a classroom during the day and then becomes the OSH at 10 minutes past 3, and I know the OSH team there all too well when I arrive at 5:59 to pick the kids up and have a chat to them. And they would certainly like a dedicated OSH space as well, but we will work with Plympton International here to make sure there is an OSH. But in terms of the broader question, we've certainly supported Plympton International with significant funding in a number of different ways. It's a school which is, I think, you know, the enrolment figures are pretty impressive in terms of how they have changed over recent years, which I think is fantastic. I have no issue with schools advocating for, including governing councils, getting out and advocating for more spending. That's what governing councils are there to do. Ultimately, I'm in this job, and that the people around me are in these jobs to decide where we prioritise the money that we do have.
Thank you. The Minister mentioned the 20-year infrastructure plan in his answer and how that would guide commitments of funding. Can I clarify that the 20-year infrastructure plan does envisage that funding will go to meet the capacity needs of schools that are bursting at the seams, that do have significant growth, and that is one of the criteria that is used to assess where expenditure on school infrastructure should go? Growing school populations.
good question, Member from Orialta. Yes, no, that's certainly a criteria. It's one of a few, but of course that's an important criteria.
Thank you. And on that basis, I took the Minister at face value and I think on occasion at the school warmly congratulated the government for the provision of the $14 million to Plympton in last year's budget on the basis that it was needed, that Plympton is a rapidly growing school that has gone from a few hundred students at the beginning of my time as Shadow Education Minister 9 years ago to where it's about to tip over 1,000, I think. So on that basis, my understanding was that the scope of works last year was absolutely required. Can the Minister perhaps provide the original scope of works determined as necessary when the $14 million project was awarded, and what are the current scope of works now that some value management has already been applied?
I might pass over to the Deputy Chief Executive, Ben Templey, to answer your question.
Thank you, Minister. Through you, there's a number of different funding streams going into Plympton International College at the moment. So there's the original commitment that was made under the previous government, plus there's some additional funding going into support additional scope through election commitment of the current government. So we're working with the school to meet the original scope of all of those commitments through the funding that's available. But as you referenced, value management is needed from time to time in order to bring those projects in on budget. I haven't got the exact detail to provide a detailed comparison of original versus current, but we'd be happy to provide that detail.
Thank the Deputy Chief Executive and the Minister. Can the Minister advise if it's a fair characterisation of his previous answer that a dedicated OSH space is not an essential requirement of a large and growing public school with large numbers of students in primary years?
I wouldn't accept that characterisation. What I'm just saying is that there are lots and lots of sites across the state that don't have a dedicated OSH. And I understand that they would all like that. And given that the range of commitments this government has made on OSH, which I would be pretty confident in saying is more than any government before it has made in terms of trying to prioritise OSH, we well and truly understand that need. But no, my answer should not be characterised as saying that that's not a valid request. I think I said from the start, I understand what they're asking for has merit. Unfortunately, we are up against, as we always are, what the budget can and can't accommodate. Hence, I think that really important need, as the Auditor General said, for a infrastructure plan, which gives us some firm criteria in which to make those decisions, but tries to give a bit, a modicum of transparency to not so much those sites that get funding, but those who don't, around how we are making our decisions.
I don't want to... I've got one more on this, sir.
No, that's okay. I think you start to stray a little bit in terms of your questioning, so perhaps get back to the budget lines.
Well, I'll go to the budget line that we've been on, page 175. There's a line for Plympton International College, $14 million being spent, and my questions are directly to the use of that expenditure. I put it to the Minister that the Minister has identified in his last answer the government has made a lot of commitments to OSH services. that we have a $14 million project currently underway where there is a negotiation between the school and the department on the exact use of that, that we have an OSH service that doesn't just service this school but the special school next door as well, and the Minister identifying the desirability of improving OSH services around the state. I ask the Minister to take into consideration a reconsideration of this relatively modest adjustment in the scheme of these new facilities. And I just introduce one new element, that being that if there is a 20-year infrastructure plan which has criteria for gauging where investments should go, it strikes me that such an investment would be absolutely within that, were it not that we're in a scarcity environment and there's limited funds to go around. I put it to the Minister only that this project of an OSH dedicated space at Plympton is not going to get cheaper if it is not incorporated in this current build, and encourage the Minister to give this further consideration in the months ahead.
Thank you. I guess I'll take that on notice. As I've said, our position on this is not brought about because we don't believe that the ask or request from the Plympton school community is without merit. It is brought about by the fact that we have a finite budget available for infrastructure. We could spend what we have. Chris Bernardi can probably do the maths in his head many, many, many times over. As Minister, I think it is important that we look at schools that have received some kind of funding support. Plympton is certainly one, and it has made very, very, very good use of that money, as the member for Morialta rightly said, and its enrolment turnaround is possibly of a like we haven't seen anywhere else. It is a real success story. But I go to schools almost every single day that haven't had any level of support, and I know how they feel when, even for meritorious projects like a dedicated OSH for Plympton, get money and they don't, they certainly ask the question around what it's going to take for them to get some support. And the foundation of the 20-year infrastructure plan, the sort of foundation on which it is built, is to make every school a great school, which I do really want us to stick to, and I am hell-bent on trying to achieve as best I can in whatever time I get in this role, and Plympton is one of the best examples of it. So I think is the Heights, Valley View, probably a long list of those who, once a bit of funding support was sent their way, some excellent leadership, perhaps a specialisation, they were able to dramatically turn around enrolment figures so that we were using that latent capacity at those sites, which is good for the community that lives around it, so they can use their local school, but it's a more equitable and economic, I guess, way of using the money that we have available to us, rather than having to build something new or expand something existing. But in order for us to achieve every school a great school and the aims of the infrastructure plan, we do have to make sure we try to focus on schools that haven't attracted any. Plympton is a school that has, and that's one of the criteria I think that we need to take into account when we're deciding what we do. But the commitment I've made earlier that I reiterate is that the department is working with Plympton International to make sure there is a good functioning OSH there.
I've got a question.